AWS Resources to Protect Elastic IP Addresses. Description: Public IP addresses. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: static IP for servers. High availability. Allocate elastic IP. Associate with instance. IP address depletion. Request more IPs. Instance termination. Re-associate with new instance. CloudFront distributions. Description: Content Delivery Network. Prerequisites: AWS account. S3 bucket. Use cases: fast content delivery. Global reach. Create distribution. Configure origin. Configure caching. Slow content delivery. Optimize origin configuration. Configure caching effectively. Security vulnerabilities. Enable WAF. Implement SSL certificates. Application load balancers. Description: Traffic distribution. Prerequisites: AWS account. EC2 instances. Use cases: load balancing. High availability. Create load balancer. Configure listeners. Register targets. Performance issues. Optimize target group configuration. Tune load balancer settings. Security vulnerabilities. Enable WAF. Implement SSL certificates. S3 buckets. Description: Object storage. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: data storage. Static website hosting. Create bucket. Configure permissions. Upload objects. Data loss. Enable versioning. Configure life cycle policies. Security vulnerabilities. Enable bucket policies. Implement encryption. RDS instances. Description: Relational databases. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: database hosting. Data persistence. Create DB instance. Configure security group. Connect to database. Database downtime. Enable read replicas. Configure backup policies. Security vulnerabilities. Enable database encryption. Implement database auditing. ElasticCache clusters. Description: In-memory caching. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: improve application performance. Reduce database load. Create cache cluster. Configure cache parameters. Connect to cache. Cache performance issues. Optimize cache configuration. Monitor cache metrics. Security vulnerabilities. Enable cache encryption. Implement access control lists. Lambda functions. Description: Serverless compute. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: event-driven processing. API gateways. Create Lambda function. Configure trigger. Test function. Function execution errors. Debug Lambda function. Monitor function metrics. Security vulnerabilities. Implement IAM roles. Use secrets manager. API gateways. Description: API management. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: expose APIs. API security. Create API gateway. Configure endpoints. Deploy API. API performance issues. Optimize API configuration. Monitor API metrics. Security vulnerabilities. Implement API authentication. Use WAF. DynamoDB tables. Description: NoSQL database. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: high throughput data storage. Flexible data modeling. Create DynamoDB table. Configure schema. Access data. Data consistency issues. Implement transactions. Use conditional writes. Performance issues. Optimize table design. Use provisioned throughput. Kinesis streams. Description: real-time data streaming. Prerequisites: AWS account. Use cases: real-time data processing. Data ingest. Create Kinesis stream. Configure stream properties. Produce and consume data. Data loss. Enable enhanced fan-out. Configure stream retention. Performance issues. Optimize stream configuration. Use shards effectively. SNS topics. Description. Message publishing. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Publish notifications. Event notifications. Create SUNS topic. Configure subscriptions. Publish messages. Message delivery issues. Check subscription status. Monitor SUNS metrics. Security vulnerabilities. Implement access control policies. SQS. Description. Message queuing. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Asynchronous communication. Message buffering. Create SQS queue. Configure queue properties. Send and receive messages. Message loss. Enable message deduplication. Use message receipts. Performance issues. Optimize queue configuration. Use dead letter queues. EC2 instances. Description. Virtual machines. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Compute resources. Application hosting. Launch EC2 instance. Configure security group. Access instance. Instance performance issues. Optimize instance configuration. Monitor instance metrics. Security vulnerabilities. Implement security best practices. Use security groups. VPC. Description. Virtual private cloud. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Private network. Security isolation. Create VPC. Configure subnets. Route traffic. Network connectivity issues. Troubleshoot network configuration. Check route tables. Security vulnerabilities. Implement security best practices. Use network ACLs. IAM roles. Description. Identity and access management. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. User authentication. Permission management. Create IAM role. Attach policies. Grant permissions. Security vulnerabilities. Implement least privilege principle. Use multi-factor authentication. Access control issues. Review IAM policies. Monitor IAM activity. WAF. Description. Web application firewall. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Web application security. Protect against attacks. Create WAF web ACL. Configure rules. Associate with resources. False positives. Fine-tune WAF rules. Monitor WAF metrics. Performance issues. Optimize WAF configuration. Use WAF managed rules. Cloud trail. Description. Logging and auditing. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Account activity monitoring. Security forensics. Enable cloud trail. Configure logging. Analyze logs. Log retention issues. Configure log retention policy. Data loss. Enable cloud trail data event logging. CloudWatch. Description. Monitoring and alerting. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. System performance monitoring. Alerting on issues. Create CloudWatch metrics. Configure alarms. View dashboard. Alert fatigue. Optimize alert thresholds. Use alert suppression. Insufficient monitoring. Configure comprehensive monitoring. Use CloudWatch insights. CloudFormation. Description. Infrastructure as code. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Infrastructure automation. Consistency and repeatability. Create CloudFormation stack. Configure resources. Deploy stack. Template errors. Validate CloudFormation template. Use CloudFormation lint. Deployment failures. Troubleshoot CloudFormation deployment. Use CloudFormation rollback. CloudFront origin access identities. Description. Origin access control. Prerequisites. AWS account. CloudFront distribution. Use cases. Restrict access to origin. Enhanced security. Create origin access identity. Configure permissions. Associate with distribution. Access denied errors. Check origin access identity permissions. Ensure correct configuration. Security vulnerabilities. Implement IAM roles. Use least privilege principle. AWS MACE. Description. Key management service. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Encryption key management. Data protection. Create KMS key. Configure key policies. Encrypt and decrypt data. Key management issues. Implement key rotation. Use key policies effectively. Security vulnerabilities. Enable key rotation. Use IAM roles for key access. AWS Secrets Manager. Description. Secrets management. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Secure storage of secrets. Access control for secrets. Create secret. Configure rotation policy. Retrieve secrets. Secret rotation issues. Configure rotation policy. Use secret versioning. Security vulnerabilities. Implement IAM roles. Use least privilege principle. AWS config. Description. Configuration management. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Infrastructure compliance. Configuration auditing. Enable AWS config. Configure rules. Analyze configuration data. Configuration compliance issues. Remediate non-compliant resources. Use AWS config rules. Performance issues. Optimize AWS config configuration. Use CloudWatch alarms. AWS guard duty. Description. Threat detection. Prerequisites. AWS account. Use cases. Detect malicious activity. Security monitoring. Enable guard duty. Configure alerting. Investigate findings. False positives. Fine-tune guard duty configuration. Investigate findings thoroughly. Performance issues. Optimize guard duty configuration. Use guard duty API.